on the phone, ladies and gentlemen. Always a pleasure to welcome him back to this program. The Progressive Change Campaign Committee co-founder, Adam Green. Hello, Adam.
Hello, Sam.
How you
doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for joining us. Of course, people can check out the PCCC at boldprogressives.org. Adam, I wanted to have you on for two reasons. First, let's start with, and I just want to touch on this briefly because we're going to be playing this. We're recording it 2 days before the runoff election in Chicago, where Chuy Garcia is basically running in the runoff against Rahm Emanuel. I know that the PCCC has been somewhat involved. I mean, it's a local race, and we don't know what the result is. But, I mean, give me a sense of how this fits in to a larger narrative that you guys have been very involved, and I don't mean to diminish it by saying narrative because there's a lot of reality to this too, but sort of like organizing this reality of more progressive boldness. Where does this fit in that narrative?
So, the big story with the Chicago mayor's race is really that there is a runoff election, right? The fact that it got to that point shows kind of the, white blood cell-like attack that a democratic privatizing corporatist will be under if that's how they govern. This never should have gotten this far for Rahm Emanuel. And I don't think that you'll have someone like Bill de Blasio in the future facing this type of real repulsion by his own electorate in the future. So that's the big story, very similar to Joe Lieberman losing his primary to Ned Lamont back in 2006. The fact that happened was a story. The fact that happened is what sent ripple effects throughout the entire Democratic Party, prompting the entire party to change its messaging, in that case on Iraq, in this case on corporate issues, economic populism issues. And what happens in stage two is really kind of the cherry on top. I definitely hope that when this airs, Garcia has won. But if he hasn't, the fact that he got this far really send a shockwave to all Democratic politicians about the consequences of governing like a corporatist privatizer.
Yeah, and the millions of dollars that were that Chuy Garcia would have been outspent is really staggering and is also sort of indicative of that result. All right. So let's leave that aside because we don't know what the result of that race is. We can only hope that Chicagoans came out and voted against Rahm Emanuel for their benefit and ours. But let's talk about this this campaign or program. I'm not sure how you refer to it. Ready for Boldness. What is involved in this?
Well, first, we refer to it as a juggernaut.
Ah, of course.
Yeah. So readyforboldness.com is an initiative that we launched about 2 weeks ago from the time of this airing. And at the time, it was over 200 Iowa and New Hampshire elected officials, political leaders, joining with us on a joint statement that basically said that we want our 2006 Democratic presidential nominee to campaign on big, bold, economic populist ideas. These are ideas like a national goal of debt-free college at all public universities and colleges, expanding Social Security benefits, not cutting them, Wall Street reform, campaign finance reform, something big on jobs and wages, including clean energy jobs, things in those spheres. And it was really remarkable that really kind of the king of Iowa Democratic politics, Tom Harkin, former senator, signed on his first real political act since retiring last year. Iowa's lone Democratic member of Congress, unfortunately, but he signed on. One of Iowa's 2 Democratic statewide officials signed on. Over 65 state legislators throughout Iowa and New Hampshire, some former New Hampshire Congress people, and all the way down the ticket, Democratic Party chairs, city council people. It really took it's somewhat an act of courage to project publicly in a field that many people don't currently expect to be too competitive, that we want our nominee to stand on these big, bold, progressive ideas. And what we will be announcing this week at the time of this airing is thousands of public leaders across the nation also joining the cause at readyforboldness.com.
But when you do it in Iowa and New Hampshire, I mean, this is not this has there is sort of some real practical implications to this, isn't there?
Yeah. So Iowa and New Hampshire are the first presidential primary and caucus states. If part of Hillary Clinton's strategy will be to try to have consensus around her enough that nobody wants to jump into the field, or if someone like Martin O'Malley does jump into the field, not giving him political space to grow. And therefore, Iowa and New Hampshire political leaders publicly signaling that they want a Democratic Party that stands for something and stands for something big, stands for something populist, is definitely politically significant. I mean, what significance did you take from it?
Well, I mean, what people I don't think fully understand, and particularly in a state like Iowa where there's caucuses, right? I mean, you've got people who are entering into these caucuses with a very specific agenda, with an agenda that has been sort of whipped already and has been organized, and it's outside of who the candidates are. So you're going to have people in these caucus rooms who are going to be arguing these points. I mean, this is not this is not ephemeral. This is really very practical, particularly when you're talking about Iowa, because it's people are just on the ground and they're in a room and they're just talking about stuff. And to arm certain people with a specific agenda and people who have committed to carry this agenda out, this has got to, and of course, the operatives of all the campaigns are going to be aware that this is happening. And so they have to get their candidate to play to this agenda. I mean, that's really what the end game here is, right? And we had a vote in the House in the Senate about a month ago, maybe a little bit less, 3 or 4 weeks ago. Maybe it's even 2 weeks. I can't remember. On expanding Social Security that has has a similar feel to it in terms of it sets down mile markers and people get judged against those mile markers.
Absolutely. Yeah. So at the time of this airing, it will be about 2 weeks ago. And this is just one more data point of many data points of how Elizabeth Warren is fundamentally changing the national conversation. The fact that she got Joe Manchin from West Virginia to partner with her on an expand Social Security resolution, and to get the number of people in the Senate who are on the record for expanding benefits from 5 to 42 literally overnight, making it the consensus position among the Democratic caucus in the Senate is just huge. It's a game changer in the national conversation. And likewise in the House, a strong majority of House members are now publicly on the record for expansion. This is no longer just the tip of the spear. This is the consensus majority viewpoint in the Democratic Party, and we really need a Democratic nominee that is out there on these issues. And just for anybody who's listening to this saying, "Wait, we can't lose the White House. We shouldn't be too liberal." The key thing to know here is that these are not quote unquote liberal positions compared to where the country is. This is where the center of the country is. The Progressive Change Institute, our sister organization, did polling on this. Expanding Social Security benefits is popular by 70% to 15%. That's Republican, Democrat, Independent voters. Debt-free college at all public universities is 71% to 19%, right? So these are huge winners if we campaign on them. And especially as people like Mitt Romney and Ted Cruz are out there talking about poverty and talking about income inequality, only talking the talk, completely being fakers. We need a Democratic Party that walks the walk, that actually has a plan, and is showing that we're the real deal. Because even the Republicans know that this is where the country is. We just need to show that we're the real proponents of this.
Now, I will say this. There's probably very few people who are listening to this who are going to say that these positions are too liberal, and if only because they have heard the polling ad nauseum on this program. But with that said, just explain a little bit how the mechanics work. I mean, I think there are people who would say, like, look, it's a non-binding resolution. So what? They voted for this. Just walk us down, how this ends up making a difference down the road. Obviously, it's not going to change overnight, but just take us through that process of how this vote makes it easier for people to run on in the future, and obviously the legislation getting done because people have run on it.
Sure. And first, just to clarify, my assumption was that by the time of this airing, you have already been on Mark Maron's podcast and his TV show, and therefore there's just a swath of new listeners who are joining. Is that a fair assumption?
That was a fair assumption.
Okay.
However, it's probably going to be we're only going to be days away from airing this, and though I have both taped and recorded those two programs, I don't think they're going to air for another month or two.
My other assumption is that they will be so enthused that they will actually go back and listen to old episodes of the Majority Report, and therefore they just need to hear this important polling info.
All right, fair enough. Touche.
To your point, yeah, and this is kind of where I put on my organizer's hat and think about, okay, how does this actually move what functionally gets done? Rewind 3 years, no politician was putting the idea of expanding Social Security benefits in their poll, right, of their local district or state as a seek to shine a spotlight on certain issues and run on those issues, right? The poll is usually a step that leads to a decision about what an entire campaign story arc, including potentially millions of dollars in TV ads, are run on. Last cycle, for the first time, after we and others worked together with each other and with Elizabeth Warren and others in the Senate to make this a credible issue by the end of 2013, we saw for the first time politicians polling on it, actively running TV ads or direct mail pieces, putting real money behind this expand Social Security message. And in key primaries like the big Hawaii Senate race with Brian Schatz, a key progressive Democrat versus corporate Democrat primary with Mike Honda in California, as well as Bonnie Watson-Coleman in New Jersey, we had 3 out of 3 people who actively campaigned on this issue and won on this issue in their primaries. And what we want in 2016 is for this to, again, be the consensus Democratic position, not just the tip of the spear progressives, but everybody polling this. When they poll it, they will find this is popular. And if you think about the campaign as a multi-billion-dollar conversation with voters, not just a way to kind of get across the finish line and then start governing, but a chance to take the country with us and set up the foundation for actually governing in 2017 and beyond. Politicians actively running TV ads on the idea that we must expand benefits is huge. It also serves to marginalize the Simpson Bowls of the world. I think we need to declare with one voice that the days of Simpson Bowls are over, the days of Warren Mansion are here, right? We need to be talking about expanding Social Security benefits and what that looks like, and just not even acknowledging those who say we have to cut benefits. So, this is how we change the conversation, and this is how we realign political incentives and realign what's possible in Congress.
I love it when you put that organizer hat on, because I think that to have that sort of theory of change outlined in a very mechanical and practical way, I think it's very helpful for people, because it's very easy to become cynical about the value of what start as symbolic votes or symbolic stances. And the same theory applies with everything you're doing in the Ready for Boldness statement that people have signed on to, right? I mean, it's the same sort of incremental, and at one point, all of a sudden, it just gets a critical mass and starts to roll much faster process.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm very glad that we didn't just say run on big, bold economic populist ideas and leave it at that, and that instead we actively specified 5 or 6 big issues here. And kind of a secondary accomplishment of this is that there are people, not just in Congress, but again, state legislators, city council people, town council people, local Democratic Party chairs, county, city, who have read the readyforboldness.com statement, decided to opt in, but in that decision really thought about the issues and said, do I agree with this? Yeah, I agree with that. Do I agree with it? Yeah, I haven't heard about that before, but that sounds wonderful. A national goal of debt-free college at public universities, the idea that, just the principle in America that you should be able to go to college and on graduation day not have debt that's a unifying force. It should be. And it's something that, again, was super popular in polling. We've been working the halls of Congress. There will actually be big news in the next couple of weeks in terms of a large coalition in Congress stepping out together behind that idea. I am very hopeful that the Clinton campaign and others during the course of 2016 will endorse that idea. And I hope that it's one of the centerpiece agenda items of the Democratic Party and just the national conversation in 2016. And it all begins by getting those ideas on the table. And that's what a resolution does. That's what this readyforboldness.com statement does, and similar vehicles like this.
The website is readyforboldness.com to check out the statement. Adam Green, co-founder of the PCCC, Thanks so much for your time today.